This story begins in Nairobi in February 2014. Tweed Shire Council engineer Bob Hanby is welcomed at the airport by TKMP manager David Apondo Mango. Taxi driver Dennis welcomes them aboard his rocket ship and whisks the group into the heart of Nairobi, where commercial districts make way for busy housing estates. And then the inner city markets and slums. But the story of the Tweed Kenya Mentoring program begins many years earlier, from a chance meeting between a man working in those slums and the general manager of Tweed Shire Council at the time.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, Alita and I both ended up at the Third World Water Forum in Kyoto in Japan in 2003. And it was a bit of a buzz, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was something different. 14,000 delegates. So we were amongst a magnitude of delegates, but we were both there representing our organisations in a poster competition. There were 160 successful applicants worldwide, and Tweed Shire Council was one of two in Australia. And Alita's NGO was selected to also represent Kenya, and we ended up side by side presenting our posters for 2 days.
Yes.
Did we not?
Yep, 2 days it was. Yep.
And it was interesting in that Alita kept on coming over and looking at my poster and scratching his head. And in the end I said, mate, you know, what's the problem? And he said, well, I can't understand what you're doing here. We had a magnificent photo taken from Tabong looking up at the Tweed River with Mount Warning in the background. And Alita's poster was one of people very much at the other end of the scale fighting for survival in one of the largest slums in Nairobi. Kibera. And Alita said, you know, you have no right to be here. You know, what possible problems could you have? You know, look at our situation. Yeah. We continued to talk for those 3 days, and on departing I said to Alita that, you know, we need to have an ongoing relationship with you. You could learn a lot from us, and we could certainly, I'm sure, learn much from you. You want to get to where we are at now, and we want to ensure that we don't end up where you are, because Lake Nairobi, as it was in the 60s, I think is now a landfill site.
Nairobi Dam.
Nairobi Dam.
Yep.
And I think Alita produced photos of boats sailing on Nairobi Dam in the 60s. So at the time, sister cities were a big deal in the local and national media, and the councils around the country were copping a hiding for their relationships with all these exotic places in the world like Paris and London and The Hague and so forth. And so I did a report to council, and I said, look, you know, rather than have a sister city relationship, why don't we look at doing something at the other end of the scale? Why not use the resources that we have in this organisation, its technical resources, the people, the financial resources that we're able to acquire, and why don't we look at making a difference to a third world community, and in so doing expose our organisation to the life of people living in marginalised communities. And so we put the report to council, unknowing how it would go, because it was a council that was very split. They really hadn't agreed on anything too much at all for the 2 or 3 years that they'd been in power. But when that report went to council, one faction of council moved the motion and the other faction of council seconded it. I think it was about the only thing that council ever agreed on, that they would support the TKMP. And so from that, the program developed. And it was the year after, I think, the International River Symposium supported Alita and an engineer, John Shire, to come to that symposium, but also to spend time in the Tweed.
We were invited by the Tweed Shire Council to Australia to learn about
how basically they manage their water institutions in Australia, and in the process to identify opportunities which could also help us to come and implement a few local projects here. And in the process, out of that trip, TKMP was born.
And out of that have come the safe water projects at Tinga,
Drought
Gona,
so long that the cattle travel.
Ochilo and Kubar. And now it was time to complete Safe Water 6 at Manyasi. But first, there's the journey through the crazy traffic of inner Nairobi to reach the accommodation for the night, where the group can reflect on the program's achievements so far.
The changes the program has bring into the community are a lot. Obabu Kadenge was well known in Siaya as cholera outbreak, prone cholera outbreak places. So after Safe Water 1 and 2, the cholera outbreak and the typhoid reduced drastically. So the community has benefited a lot because they used to spend a lot of money to treat themselves from cholera diseases and typhoid.
In terms of quality of life, the key thing has been having basically potable water for domestic use, whereby most of those instances of waterborne disease have been reduced.
The community, especially women and children, used to spend a lot of time going to search for water. The women will spend the whole day going to search for water, and it's not enough, and it's not clean. And those people who are weak would spend a lot of money buying water from water vendors. So the community really has gained a lot, saving time, saving money, and even their life is now safe.
Rural communities who were traveling long distances in search of water, some going as up to a distance of around 20 kilometers, have the water distance reduced. At the same time, the schools in the area have also had access to clean water.
In fact, the number of children in school has increased. Nowadays, in fact, that the schools are full. Women spend most of their time now going to gardens, going to their business. Cultivation in that area was very low. But nowadays, you'll find that people are busy doing cultivation. The crops are doing well, and people are getting a lot of a very big harvest compared to last time.
Until we came in, there was very little happening in terms of improved sanitation. You know, for a long time there was no serious, what you'd call, schemes to actually address the water problems, and there are really a lot of problems there, in spite of having a government close by. Yes. So when we went in, the idea was not really to solve the problems, the water problems in the area. The idea was basically to show the people and also the government, this is, you know, there's a problem. Instead of complaining that, you know, you're not doing anything, why don't we go in and demonstrate? So the idea was actually to demonstrate, and hopefully, you know,
there are sustainable low-cost options.
Yeah.
Technology
Yeah.
has developed to the extent where there are sustainable, low-cost, achievable options.
Yep.
And you know, hopefully the government will be picking up on that, and other NGOs.
So the water projects that we're working on are mentoring the local community, and hopefully to a small degree the local government institutions, to sort of say, look, this is where you should be heading. These projects aren't the total solution. You know, these projects aren't changing people's lives forever, but you should be aspiring towards these types of projects and making access to water like this something that people like us take for granted, as opposed to something that people don't even aspire to. And until people see that access to safe water is achievable, a lot of people in the areas where we're working probably don't even register it as something that they should be aspiring to. Safe water and access to safe sanitation is so far beyond the means of people in the villages that we're working with. It's not really on their list of day-to-day needs.
We have had a number of people traveling to Australia, and we have had a number of people traveling from the Tweed Shire to Kenya on a cultural exchange basis.
So this is why I'm saying something has shifted. It will never be the same. If TKMP was to walk away from it, the ground has shifted. Yeah? The community expectation is different. When you go on the ground, they expect you to sit down with them to actually look into the water problem. They are not going to expect you to just deliver it like traditionally it was happening. So that's what has shifted.
The other aspect that I've seen is the training. The communities have been trained on how to manage water kiosks on a sustainable basis. The communities have also basically been trained, especially in the technical areas. Some artisans have gained technical skills in the management of the water kiosks and in the management of water projects in general.
So, and the program has grown. A leader or I or no one else knew that the program would end up where it is today. You know, there's been some fluke, there's been some tragedies, there's been some sadness, but there's been a lot of achievements. And it's a wonderful model. I mean, you know, for $30,000 we deliver a safe water project.
Day 1 of Safe Water 6 was spent travelling to Nakuru, learning that rocks can make excellent witches' hats on freshly laid roads. The TKMP delegation was on its way to help at a health clinic, being run on the outskirts of Nakuru by the Health Outreach Organisation of Kenya. It met the Hook delegation at its headquarters and travelled along roads little better than tracks. Eventually, they arrive at an isolated farm that is hosting the clinic.
Jambo. Salama sana.
A large crowd has already gathered for the rare opportunity to access health services. There's a long list of people sitting patiently waiting for care. The Hook team prepares for a long day ahead. Doing health checks and diagnosing ailments.
Because osteoarthritis, when she doesn't keep her joints moving, they get stiff and sore.
But there will be many successes throughout the day.
Kenya Health, in cooperation with Tweed, the Tweed program, we've been able to reach out to the community wholesomely by providing clean water to take care of the waterborne diseases, which also makes it easier for Kenya Health sensitization program on health. And that collaboration works so well when we do the two things together. So twice a year, Kenya Health comes out with nurses, registered nurses from Australia, and we run clinics, giving out medicine, referrals, and surgeries. And we've seen a lot of change in people, mostly the people we've helped in their surgeries and long-term treatments. And we also have people that we have met who had been incapacitated for a long time because they could not afford a surgery. And through Kenya Health, they've been able to be taken to hospital and mended back, and they are now back to their jobs.
But for every person they treat, more people arrive, and the queue continues to grow. There is no way they will be able to see everyone sitting outside the tent today. The drive to Siaya the next day is slow progress. Through endless roadworks, the congested villages, and the tourist stops for photos at the equator. The traffic is a progression of trucks, well-laden motorbikes, and, in this part of Kenya, tractors transporting sugarcane. A ceremony brings traffic to a complete stop in one of the villages. The endless roadside stalls eventually give way to the tea plantations that are plentiful in this part of Kenya, and the small huts that provide accommodation for their many workers. Only a few more hours of driving before they reach the village of Siaya.